And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake, Humboldt, and Ankeny, Iowa. Well, how are you today? Hope you're taking a little bit of time for yourself. And welcome to today's program. Whether you watch this in a video form or you're listening to it on some sort of a podcast platform, just want to say welcome to the program. Today we're going to be discussing something that I think oftentimes does not get the time and the opportunity that it should. Today we're going to be discussing replacements. Now, you may not even have heard of the term. You may not know what replacements are. You don't have any general feeling if they're good or they're bad. But I'll just put it to you this way. If you are an insurance consumer, in other words, you have automobile insurance, you have homeowners insurance, you have disability, long-term care, life insurance, annuity contracts, those are all types of insurance. Those are products that come from insurance companies. And of course, we have free license to be able to do with our own insurance what we want, whether we keep it and we continue to pay for it, or we decide to surrender it, or to just stop paying it altogether and let it terminate. But there are things out there in this world called replacements, and today I want to take a little bit of time to just educate you on the process of replacements and why you need to be very, very careful when somebody approaches you and suggests to you that you need to replace what you already have. Now, if you're brand new to the program, aside from the welcome, I encourage you to go to our website, johnsonwim.com, where there's a wealth of information. There's past radio shows, there's YouTube videos that you can watch, there are previous podcasts that you can look up. There's even white papers that you can study and become more financially literate on financially relevant topics, things that are going to help provide you kind of that understanding of what it takes to go from where you are to where you want to be in retirement. What does it take to truly successfully retire and to feel good about retirement and not to live in a state of worry or stress? All of those things are available. I also encourage you to get a copy of my book, which is behind me here. Pretty certain my head is covering it up, but the Capitalized Retirement. This is something that I wrote, and I hope that it's a good resource that you can turn to. And I encourage you, not only is it inexpensive enough for you to own a copy, but when you get done with it, I want you to pay it forward. I want you to pass that on to somebody else who's potentially coming up to retirement, and they're looking to try to take this bucket of money that they've worked so hard to save and accumulate and turn it into an income stream that they can't ever outlive. So let's get into the topic, replacements. Now, obviously, this doesn't sound very exciting, and you know what? It really isn't exciting. However, this is one of those decisions that you could fatefully make that could change the course of your retirement. It could change the course of your life. It could change the course of the quality of your life. Yes, it is that important. And so let me just kind of explain to you, many years ago, under the Obama administration, Obama tried passing what was called the fiduciary rule. And the fiduciary rule, it just sounded like common sense. It just sounded like logic that anyone who is in the position of authority, licensure to provide advice, whether they're an insurance agent, whether they're a broker, whether they're a fiduciary and a financial advisor like myself and our firm, the reality is that he wanted everyone to maintain this level of integrity in which they would be providing advice that was in the client's best interest, not that of their own. And, you know, we look at that and we say, well, duh, that just seems only natural. And yet you would be amazed at the firestorm that drew. The financial services industry all but revolted. And in many respects, there was all sorts of pushback to the Department of Labor, suggesting that was not fair. We certainly didn't need to have to all act as fiduciaries. Now, that may seem strange in your mind, but remember, This is the financial services world. The financial services world is going to vehemently defend its business model and the bottom line. And so ultimately, it got cast down. Ultimately, it was a small insurance company, believe it or not, in Wisconsin that basically threatened the Department of Labor that they were going to take them all the way to the Supreme Court and they were going to win if the Department of Labor didn't roll over and play possum, which it did. And so ultimately, the fiduciary rule was not implemented. Now, certainly, there have been changes. There's been things that have been implemented, maybe here or maybe over here, that have tried and attempted to kind of give a superficial greater accountability to financial service advisors. And I think that that's good. But the point of today's discussion is replacements. And so I want to just kind of go through and explain to you what a replacement is, how a replacement works, and why you need to be very, very careful when someone approaches you with this idea of replacement. Now, we're going to use primarily annuities and primarily life insurance, both of which can be very useful tools to a person. Life insurance, of course, is one of those things that can take care of a spouse. It can take care of debts. It can create an inheritance and a legacy out of thin air for our family and for our grandchildren. Life insurance is a very valuable tool. Life insurance is used in many, many ways to help fund businesses and buy-sell agreements and things of that nature if there's a passing of an owner. And so life insurance is just one of those things that, though it is not talked about very often, it can be a very unsung hero, and it can be a very useful tool for you and for your family. However, annuity contracts are also something that can be very useful if you happen to tend to be more on the conservative end. You like insured money. You like money to be safe and guaranteed to always be there plus interest. You like that idea that you can always get at it if you need it, and you can turn on potentially an income stream that will last the rest of your life. All of these things are things that annuity contracts that are fixed, that are insured, can do for you and can do for your money. But let's say that someone knocks on your door. Let's say that a couple of them knock on your door and they kind of invite themselves in. They sit down and they start questioning you. This is like more of a light in the eye and a cigarette hanging out of the corner of the mouth, and they begin to nicely interrogate you about what you have and who it's with and what it's worth and what it's in. And eventually, after, being able to come clean with the details, if you choose to do that, they have an idea that maybe, just maybe, you should take that old piece of garbage that you have and you should update it to the humdinger of a product that they've got. In other words, they've got a better mousetrap than the one that you have, and they encourage you to take and sign the papers right there on the kitchen table to move away from plan A to go to their plan B. Sounds good at the time, but here's the deal. It's very overwhelming. They don't give you time to think, and they continue to push, and eventually you come to a point where you're just like, fine, whatever, just let me sign so that I can get you out of my house. Does that sound familiar to some of you? I'm sure that it does. Because, friends, it happens in this country almost every single day. You see, the point is just because a person with a license walks into your home or you walk into their office and they provide you an opinion does not necessarily mean that what they are providing you is in your best interest. And this is the reason why it is so very important. And I know it shouldn't even be a question mark. It shouldn't even be a conversation. It's not even fair that here you could be a 70-plus-year-old who really is just trying to enjoy retirement, and out of nowhere, now you have individuals in your home that are trying to seemingly convince you to go from one direction to another. And you don't seem to have time to rebuttal. You don't seem to have questions that are forming properly in your mind. You seem overwhelmed and they seem kind of pushy, And yet they're nice enough, like they certainly, aren't here to do you harm, or are they? You see, this is a very gray area. And this is an area in which I get very, very defensive on my clients when all of a sudden I see that they are potentially being perpetrated upon. So is there any grounds to even replace? Let's answer that question. And the answer is absolutely. Things do change. Things evolve. Your life changes. Insurance companies change. Products change. Interest rates change. Economic environments change. Debt changes. Inheritance changes. All of these things are things that can, for one reason or another, they may give you an absolute confident answer that replacing what you have with that of something else could be 1,000% appropriate. It is something that is often done, and it is something that is often done absolutely appropriately. But let me explain this to you. You see, when it comes to making a potentially life-altering decision, this ought not to be a snap decision. This should be something where if the advisor, the agent, whoever is proposing this change to you is truly looking out for your best interest, regardless of how many hours they might have driven to knock on your door. The reality is that this is your decision, not theirs. And they have absolutely no right to force you, to wear you down, to convince you that this is a decision that you have to make right away. This is something, rather, that I want you to make with absolute certainty. And the reality is that in order to be able to suggest to a client that going from point A to point B is in their best interest, it is upon us as the financial professionals to show you a side-by-side comparison. And you know what? Oftentimes, product salesmen that are knocking at your door, product sales ladies that are knocking at your door, and they're trying to convince you to go from point A to point B, well, they may be well-intentioned. They may actually want to do well for you, but they may have quotas that they have to meet. They may have sales goals that they're trying to obtain and reach. They may be in a position where they have absolutely no scruples and they're here to just simply sell you something, to walk out the door, to say that they got the sale, and to never really service you ever again. And so it is something where you want to see a side-by-side comparison. You want to be able to understand the true math behind replacing the life insurance policy, or the true math behind replacing the annuity contract. You want to be able to see that if you go from this annuity to that annuity, not only have you been increased in the amount of potential return, you want to see that you're not giving up income that you had previous under the old annuity contract, the contract that had been serving you and maybe doing a good job of it. You see, this is something where we have to be on guard. And in the same way that several weeks ago we talked about love scams and just money scams and general investment scams, my friends, we also have to be diligent to be aware of financial professionals who are seeking to just simply sell us something. Take something that we have had that has been perfectly serviceable and usable and could well be into the future exactly what we need, and they are proposing a replacement for no other reason other than to be able to make commission. So if you've ever been approached, are you getting that side-by-side comparison? Are you being provided information that is so explicitly clear that what you have will indeed be upgraded in every way, shape, or form by going from the old product that you currently have to the new product? So let me just share with you a very quick story. Recently, it came to my attention that an older couple of mine had been approached by a couple of insurance agents, and these insurance agents had knocked on the door. They invited themselves in. They sat down and began to just vomit all of their details all over my clients. Now, my client, at least the husband, has not been doing well as far as health. His health has been declining. He is now in a position where they are under the impression that he has a very serious disease that is coming. And so all of this was very overwhelming for the wife. And this couple of agents simply wouldn't leave. And they said, well, you need to go from this to this. In fact, let us go ahead and let's call into the insurance company collectively together. And they thought, well, that sounds like a reasonable idea. I mean, after all, we're going to be able to see a side-by-side comparison. And they called, and of course, they asked all of the information, and they got the detailed information. And then they proceeded to show how they could improve this person's or this couple's life. Now, up until this point, I have no issue with this whatsoever. But then here came the lies. The lies that they had a product that was severely underperforming. They had a product that wasn't going to do what had been suggested that the product would do. They even went as far as suggesting, well, we're going to just simply remove this feature off from this annuity contract because, well, you simply don't need it. And don't worry, Mr. Husband, the product will still maintain the benefit for you. Well, all of those things after that phone call turned out to be lies. And what was really happening was the insurance agents were removing off from this couple's annuity contract a vital benefit that would provide them income that was going to be guaranteed for the rest of their life. And in the event that they were diagnosed or they had the inability of performing 2 out of 6 activities of daily living, where their income was going to be significantly increased by 50%. Well, these two unscrupulous insurance agents were trying to remove that benefit off from this contract. Now, mind you, my client is about one test away from being diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so as you can imagine, knowing what you may know about Parkinson's, this is something where it is likely, at the very least, that the surviving spouse is going to need income. But they coerced them into signing paperwork. And what they were trying to do was they were trying to remove this vital benefit off from the annuity contract because, my friends, they knew that if they went and they tried applying to replace this product, the suitability department in their insurance company that they were proposing was going to deny that replacement as being unsuitable. You see, believe it or not, morals and ethics should be driving our industry. They should be driving the decisions and the advice that are coming out of the mouths of insurance agents and brokers and financial advisors. But the reality is that oftentimes it's self-interest. And you see, what this insurance agent or agents were trying to do was they were trying to circumvent their suitability department. The suitability department is there to keep agents honest and to be able to say, no, I'm sorry, that's not a good deal for the client. No, I'm sorry, that replacing that piece of business would be doing the client harm. But by removing the product, then they could honestly send the application in suggesting that their existing annuity that's being replaced did not have any benefits. Why? Because those agents had convinced the clients to verbally remove them. Do you see how tricky this is? Do you understand now why it gets my dander up as a fiduciary when I see individuals like this perpetrating upon especially older individuals? My friends, we have to be diligent. We have to be aware. We have to ask questions. And if someone simply is not allowing you the space to make a good, sound decision, they're not giving you side-by-side comparisons, they are not giving you the time to make a decision, my friends, that right there in and of itself is a red flag. I don't give a hoot and a holler how many miles they drove to come see you, to knock on your door, unsolicited. The reality is that that's on them. You have to make a decision that you feel is right for you. You trust your gut instinct. When life insurance agents convince you that this policy over here needs to be replaced with this policy over here, it is simply no different than replacing an annuity contract. It is no different whatsoever. In fact, it may actually harm you. You may end up having to go through another paramed exam, another physical, answer more health questions. You may end up getting denied, or you may end up getting rated. You may end up having to pay more for that new insurance. And of course, you may be thinking in your mind, well, I can always say no, and yes, you can. But remember that you want absolutely nothing to happen to the existing life insurance policy that you may already have that could be perfectly serviceable. Try keeping what you already have and making it work if it's not too far gone. I hate replacing things. I only want to replace if I absolutely know all across the board that when I do replace that product, whether it's life insurance, annuities, whatever it is, that it will be truly an upgrade for my client in all ways, shapes, and forms. And not only that, but we have to be thinking ahead to a surviving spouse. We have to be thinking ahead to children and to grandchildren. Is what we're doing today going to certainly help that next generation? So my friends, as much as I want to suggest that today's video is all about good stuff, unfortunately, it is a word of caution. It's something that is real life. It's something that we have to, regardless of our age, regardless of our condition, we have to be very, very careful, because there just simply is individuals out there that all they simply want to do is sell us something, when in reality it may not be the very best thing for us. If you're looking for a second opinion, if things have changed for you and you truly want to see if a replacement is in your best interest, I encourage you, get with a fiduciary, ask questions, have them give you a second opinion to see if they agree with you, with your gut instinct. They agree with that first agent or financial advisor. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.